This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. Okay, so tonight we're learning Le'ufuah Shlema to Eliyahu Avraham ben Keren, to Le'ufuah Shlema to Chaya Sheina Chana Bas Itcha, and to Yecheskel ben Tzila. Okay, so today there was a lot of thought that went, and by the way, that doesn't mean anything, a lot of thought, because it could still be completely wrong. But there's a lot of thought that went into today's class and B'ezras Hashem next week's class as well. What we're going to go through is something very interesting. So when we first started the Mashiach series, I think it was like about 2 years ago, we spoke about two classes called the End of Days, End of Times, End of Days. I don't recall the title, but we spoke about the things that happened during the End of Days. We're going to be repeating some of that information, but in a completely different context. So what we're going to do is something that a lot of what we're going to be saying today, and by we I mean I, and is something that I've been working on, and this is a lot of it is my own. You call it pshat. I don't know how you say pshat in English. So like my interpretation, my explanation, my understanding of some things. I tried to look for sources for a lot of the things that I was saying. I had a very hard time, but I put a lot of thought into this. And again, it could still be completely wrong. But we're going to go through a journey today, a very, very interesting journey. And the way that this is the class that's going to work like this, if you're able to this is a class that you could listen spacing in, spacing out, and you'll get it. But the more that you concentrate and the more that you're with me, the more that you'll understand it of where my point is and what I'm trying to say. We're going to be speaking about the nuances of words and the difference of words and the difference of what the Gemara, what the sages mean when it means the end of days, what is referring to, when is it the end of days. So one of the things that we're going to be quoting on is going to be from, majority of the time we're going to be focusing on two different Gemarot. One of them is a Gemara in Sotah, page 49b. Another one is a Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97 and 98. Now, what's interesting when you go and when you learn these Gemarot and you try to compare them to see the differences between them, is something very, very interesting. That the Gemarot both say what's going to be like in the end of days. Like, how do we know that it's going to be in the time of the end of days? What it appears to be, if you do a quick read through, it looks like they're saying the same things. But when you dig into it, the nuance is that if you're reading it in English, this is the problem of reading things in English. Because if you're reading in English, so it depends on the translator. How the person decided to translate, that's how you're going to understand the product or understand the words. But when you look at the Aramaic or the Hebrew words, it's very, very different, but very, very subtly different. And here's the way that we're going to start is just by understanding the broad concept of what these two Gemara speak about. The Gemara in Sotah speaks about something known as the Ikvisa de Mashiach, or better yet, Ba'akavos Mashiach. The Ikvisa de Mashiach, the translation is the heels of Mashiach. Heels of Mashiach, heel is like the bottom of the foot. So heels of Mashiach mean at the end of days, just like the foot is at the end of the body, so too the end of days, meaning right before Mashiach comes, this is what's going to happen. And the Gemara goes, and we'll go through all the details, B'ezras Hashem, on what the Gemara says is going to happen before Mashiach comes. However, there's something very different that the Gemara says in Masechet Sanhedrin in page 97 and 98. What did the Gemara say over there? It doesn't say the Ikvesat Mashiach, it doesn't say the heels of Mashiach. It says, Dor sheben David ba, in the generation when the Messiah comes. Now, when you're just reading it quickly, you're like, okay, fine, what's the difference? Yeah, but Mashiach comes. Like, no, there's a very big difference in the era of when Mashiach comes or in the generation when Mashiach comes. Do you understand the difference? Dar sheben David ba, the generation of when, which means it's very imminent. And then you have the Ikvus of the Mashiach, the time of Mashiach, the time that's leading up to Mashiach. There's even another one that goes even closer, that's Ein Ben David Ba. David is not coming. When it says David Ba or Ben David come, it's referring to the Mashiach, because the Mashiach comes from the kingship of David HaMelech. So Ein Ben David Ba, the son of King David, is not going to come until ... We'll see what it says. So there's different levels. When you're seeing something in the Quran, it looks like it's saying the same things, but it's not necessarily saying the same things. So when we're going to be going through all these prophecies, what we have to understand is, first and foremost, why did the sages tell us this? What is the benefit of telling us what's going to happen before the end of the day? So Rabbi Dessler goes and says that the purpose is that the things that we're going to be speaking about today, and this is really not my focus. This really was my focus more, if I remember my class correctly. I didn't listen to it. From my memory serves me correctly, 2 years ago, the focus was on what we can gain out from looking at the end of days. Here's going to be a little bit of a different focus. The focus is going to really be, how do we know that we're in the end of days? Now again, that shouldn't mean that you shouldn't utilize this for the focus of like, okay, now what should we do to get out of this? Like, so the way that Rabbi Dessler goes and explains it is that lost some function over here. I hope the camera is still recording. Here we go. Oh, it's still recording. Okay, good. So what Rabbi Dessler says that why did the sages tell this to us? Because these are the things that we need to work on in the end of days. This is sort of like a prescription from the doctor, known as Dr. Sages, Dr. Chachamim, and they tell us in the end of days, there's going to be things that are going to be happening. This is what you should be focusing on. So these things that we're going to be speaking about, even though I'm not going to be telling us, oh, let's focus on this, maybe I'll split it out here and there, but it is something you should bear in mind that this is something we need to focus on. However, the most important part of this introduction is the following. The Rambam, Maimonides, in Hilchot Melachim, says like this in chapter 12, halacha bet, number 2. It says that all these matters of what we're speaking about in the end of days, we don't know how it will be until it will be. So a lot of these things is the way that, like I said before, is the way that I'm going to explain it, the way that I'm going to interpret it, the way that you're going to explain it, you're going to interpret it. Again, we're saying what the sage just said, but then let's take it a step further. What does that mean? But ultimately speaking, we really don't know how it's going to be until it will be. Right? Okay, so that with that introduction, let's go and let's begin with some examples. Let's begin with some examples. So the Gemara in Sotah is talking about the ikvus of the Mashiach, the footsteps of the general time frame of when Mashiach is coming. It says like this. It says that those who fear sin will be viewed with disgust. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to shoot out a bunch of sources. Then we're going to explain each and every one source of these, by itself, and then we're going to combine all the sources together. So this is the part where you have to stick with me. All right, so focus. So that's Gemara in Sotah. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that Dor sheben David comes, the generation when Mashiach comes, anybody who deviates from evil, who goes away from evil, is going to be insane. Did you notice the difference of what I just said? I said both the same things, but in different words. Number one, in Sotah, we said those who fear sin will be looked at with disgust. Another one says that anybody who deviates from evil, also similar terminology to someone who fears from sin, will be deemed insane. Insane and disgust, very different words. And again, we're using translation where we're trying to make it as simple as possible. So you see over here the difference of what you're dealing with in one Gemara versus in another Gemara. Let's use another example. Gemara Sotah, ikvus of the Mashiach. Let me make it very, very clear. Whenever I say ikvus of the Mashiach, I mean the time frame of Mashiach. Whenever I say Dor sheben David ba, that is the time closer to Mashiach. And we're going to see this general movement that when we're dealing with ikvus of the Mashiach, which is the footsteps, the era of Mashiach, that's going to be something that is going to be less severe. I think that's a good word. Less severe than when we're dealing with the generation of Mashiach comes. So one is going to be more lighter, one is going to be more heavier, and you'll see it. For example, the example that we just used is people that will, that fear sin will be looked at as disgust, versus people that run away from evil will look like they're crazy. So you see the difference of one is less and one is more. You following me so far? This is where I'm telling you you have to bear with me a little bit. Okay. The Gemara, the next example I'm going to give you is the Gemara in Sotah. That's in page 49a. That says that in the ikvus of the Mashiach, it's going to be that the wisdom of the Torah scholars is going to decay. As opposed to the Gemara in Sanhedrin, is going to say that the Torah scholars are going to decrease. There's a difference. Decay and decrease. One is speaking about wisdom, one is speaking about specifically the Torah scholars. The Gemara Ksubot says that there's going to be, I'm going to shoot out for you another about 4 more sources, and then let's start explaining each one. The Gemara Ksubot, page 112b, says that there's going to be the time of the generation of Mashiach is going to be the accusation against the Chachamim. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 98a, says that even Torah scholars won't enjoy peace. And the Gemara in Sotah says that the truth will vanish, and the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that honor will dwindle. These are just some things. These are, by the way, each and every single one of these there's a whole lot to explain. We're going to deal very, very briefly on each and every single one, and then we're going to bind everything together. So bear with me. Let's start first with those who fear sin will be viewed with disgust. This is the Gemara in Sotah. This is referring to the ikvus of the Mashiach, so the early era. Now, what does that mean? You view it as disgust. So look at the generation now that, we're in a world where there's a lot of peer pressure, that you may feel a little bit, I don't know if the word is bad, but you'll feel uncomfortable if, let's say, you have to pray Shemona Esrei, right? You have to stand on, you have to play the Amidah in an airport. Are you going to feel a little bit like, it's going to be looking, and then you see somebody, let's say, in the far corner, let's say, or in the middle, putting on talit, tefillin, and he's sitting there and he's praying over there. So some people, I'm sure not anybody in this room, will look at that and be like, come on. This is, we're talking about the year 2000 and blah, 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 wherever you're listening to the class, right? We're talking about an advanced age. You're sitting over here, you're praying, go in the corner, go in the side. It's going to be looked at in a very, very, low, there's a lot of peer pressure, and we tend to look at things like, in a little bit of disgust. I'm talking about the general population. Obviously, the more religious people are like, oh, Baruch Hashem, look at that, it's unbelievable. He's sitting in the middle of the plane and he's going and he's putting on tefillin. There was a story that somebody was putting on tefillin and they thought it was a bomb threat. Because I don't know where they were, that they never saw somebody put on tefillin. But it was somewhere in America. It was like somewhere in mid-USA, where the real Americans live. And they eat the real steaks, and they smoke the real cigarettes and cigars, and the real white supremacists, whatever it is, the real Americans. So but there's a lot of peer pressure. We tend to view things that the more righteous, a little bit of like, okay, why are you being so fanatic? Why are you being, it's a little bit, too much. You have people that go to a corporate party. And the corporate party, they don't realize that God is also in the corporate party. And they usually check the tzniut with the coat check. It usually goes together with there. But the coat comes off and the tzniut comes off, and I'll pick it up later, and maybe I'll give you a tip. And maybe I'll tip God also for a little charity, or things like that. There's a little bit of peer pressure that we tend to look at the religious observance as a little bit of like, a little bit in a disgust. That's the Gemara in Sotah, which is talking about the time before the Mashiach comes. So let's look at the time, now, the generation of when Mashiach is coming. There's the Gemara in Sanhedrin that says that the Dor Sheben David Ba, it says that whoever deviates from evil is called insane by the people. They consider that insane. Now let's speak a little bit about the difference between disgust and insane. So disgust means like, you go and somebody's doing something and you're like, yeah. Not to my taste. I would not do that. Well, come on, why do you do that? But you keep it to yourself. That's disgust. What's insane? Insane is like, you're doing that? Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? How could you even think about doing that? There's a huge difference of what's going on over here. So we see over here that the disgust towards the Torah outlook is going to go, and it's going to increase. Instead of going and becoming better, it's going to go from something that is disgust to something that is insane, that is crazy. This would lead us to the next thing, which Gemara Sotah says, that the wisdom of the Torah scholars will decay, would spoil. It's v'chachmat sofrim tisrach. Tisrach is like, whoever speaks Hebrew, tisrach is like smelling, is like spoiled, something that went bad. Now, Torah scholarship, what it means is that it's first and foremost, it's not going to be respected. It's going to be degraded. And the other interesting thing to look at it is sofrim. Why does it say chachmat sofrim? Sofrim in Hebrew means those that count. What is chachmat sofrim? Why does it mean referring to those against? I saw a very interesting explanation by Rabbi Israel Tabor that says that he goes and he quotes the sages who tell us that Torah scholars are called sofrim. Why? Because they count the letters of the Torah. What do you mean they count the letters of the Torah? So he says something very interesting. Now, recently, we have something that is known as Torah codes. Whoever's not familiar with Torah codes is where you have codes that are hidden in the Torah that tell you things about the future that there's no way it would have been able to know unless it was made by God. So what only came out recently due to the computer technology is we see these codes and how sophisticated and how it's impossible for anybody other than a God creator to be able to put these codes in the Torah. So now, usually, you see something like this, you'd be like, okay, that must be that the Torah is real. This is no. that chachmat sofrim tischach, even this, even where the sages count, even nowadays, you can have people that even though it's going to be not logical, they're going to claim, no, it's still man-made. Somehow they're going to claim that even though it's something that's impossible to be man-made, again, I don't want to get too much into this. We spoke about it in the Divinity series, about the whole concept of Torah codes, and if you want to go, you can review that one to understand the whole concept of Torah codes. But it's very, very simply obvious and straightforward that it is impossible that the Torah was created by anything else other than God. But even this will be spoiled in the time of Mashiach. Because in the time of Mashiach, people are going to be like, they're going to make excuses for that, even though it's not logical. But even more so, what it means is that the Torah scholars will decay, will spoil, that even though we have the Torah that we have nowadays, the yeshivas are booming, they're packed. The seminaries are packed, but there's a difference. Even though the quantity is very high, the quality is very, very different. In the olden days, in the previous generation, you had, from the poor to the wealthiest, they'll be in the synagogue learning from, let's say, 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's when they'll be learning and praying. Then they go to work from 10 to 4, and then they'll go back into the Bet Midrash from 4 to 10. That's what a working person was known at in the olden days. Nowadays, that person is known as the Gadol Hadol. That is like the highest of the high. You're talking about learning 8 hours a day? That's unbelievable. That's crazy. That's like Kolol and working. Where do you get the time? How does he catch up on all his movies and TV shows? Where does he do it? How does he know what's going on in Hollywood? How could he live? How could he survive in a conversation in our century without knowing all these things? We think about it so the quantity, even though it increased, the quality was very different. The quality was a little bit spoiled from what we used to have. The Rishonim, the Gemara in Sotah, in page 21, speaks about it. The Torah brings it down that the sages in the Rishonim, even the sages, well, how did they? When they would learn Torah, they did not, to the level that they learned, they did not walk 4 amot. They did not walk 6 to 8 feet without thinking of Torah. Nowadays, you think of someone as a Talmid Chacham that's learning 2 hours a day. Oh, 32 hours a day, unbelievable. You're probably a rabbi, you probably could go and guide the entire nation. Back then, if you did it, you know what it means to not walk 6 to 8 feet without thinking of Torah? That means you're always thinking of Torah. There's nothing else, there's no such a thing as spacing out. Like, what do you mean spacing out? You're thinking about Torah the entire time. So while we see the Torah, Baruch Hashem, the quantity-wise is very out there, the quality is very different. And that's what the Gemara is referring to, one interpretation, that it's going to spoil. The flavor of the Torah is going to spoil a little bit. The wisdom of the sages is going to spoil a little bit. Not the flavor, chas v'shalom. There's another interesting, concept in this, and this is my own chidush on this, is the Zohar tells us, the Kuna Zohar tells us that during the end of days, right before Mashiach comes, the Erev Rav will rule. The Erev Rav is, I can't even begin to explain Erev Rav. Just look at one of the other classes I gave in Mashiach about Erev Rav. A lot to speak about Erev Rav. The Erev Rav will rule. The Vilna Gaon says that they will become the leaders of the nation. They will become the leaders of the nation. The Divrei Chaim goes and says before the arrival of Mashiach, the Erev Rav, there will be rabbis from the Erev Rav. A very, very twisted ideology, and not according to the Torah, according to their own things. And they're going to go and says the Divrei Chaim, even though the Israel themselves are holy, but the Erev Rav, the leaders, they're going to work only for their own benefit. They don't care about the public. They want to rule over the public. They're doing things either for money, for honor, or for different other not lishma things. This is what we could say maybe is this is what it means that the Torah scholars, the wisdom of the Torah scholars will be decayed because it will be misused by people that are misusing them, also known as the Erev Rav. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 98a, says that the Dor Sheben David Ba, the generation, they will not have any peace. What does it mean have peace? There's a lot to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it very, very briefly, and you could utilize this for your own benefit depending on how much you know about the politics. So I'm not going to go into it. But the Gemara says that, and this is something that the Maharsha goes and explains this in the Gemara, that it used to be the Torah scholars used to go and come in peace. What does that mean? Regarding Talmudic debates. Torah scholars will go and they will debate each other peacefully. But in the time of Mashiach, they will not enjoy the peace between themselves regarding these debates. Why? Because they will be overcome with the evil inclination. That is a very, very heavy statement that I just said. I'm not going to go into it for reasons that I decided very obviously not to, but there's a lot to speak about that. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97a, goes and says that in the generation when when Mashiach is coming, there's going to be a decrease in the Torah scholars. Now we started off by saying that that there's going to be a decay in the wisdom of Torah scholars. What is a decrease in the Torah scholars? So when you look at, let's say a carcass, and I'm not like a dead animal. First, it starts decaying, then it starts disappearing. So there's a, obviously it goes into its own, with the flies and the fleas and all the other vultures and whatnot. They eventually go and they disappear. Step one, the Gemara in Sotah says that first is going to be a decay in the wisdom. But then what's going to happen? Then in the generation, the Dosha Ben David Ba, the generation, then it's going to start disappearing. The Ein Yaakov goes and explains that they will die beforehand. The sages will die beforehand, so they will not have to endure the hardships during the coming of Mashiach. So we see over here a very, very common thread, that in the beginning, it's going to be light. But then the same things are going to go heavier. There's so much that I just said that I wish I see a lot of things that not, like in the nicest way possible. If you realize you have to be very, very careful to the words that I'm saying, to the nuances in the words. Listen to the following. So, in the generation of it's a heavy class, but a light class at the same time. You see what I'm saying? That you could listen to everything and be like, yeah, well, the sages are dying off. And like, yeah, the sages, wisdom are decaying, they're off. But if you understand how to connect it, then you're going in a different level. Then we're going on a different level. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97a, says that the generation when Bet David comes, that the Galil and the Gavlan will be desolate, will be destroyed. Now, what does this mean by that? Let's hold the question. What does that mean by that? Write it down. We'll do it afterwards. I want to be able to focus through this. The Torah scholars, they reside in these places. This means that the places that would be cultivated by Torah scholarship is going to remain desolate. And the Yad Ramah goes and explains this, and this is also referring to what? The parchment paper. The parchment paper that the Torah is written on, this is also going to be neglected. Why? Because there is going to be a decrease in Torah scholars. There's going to be a decrease in Torah scholars. And the Gemara goes on and quotes like this. Great people who protect the borders, they will go themselves from city to city and will not find favor. This means, what it's referring to, these are referring to the righteous people. Righteous people, not talking about physical borders, they're talking about spiritual borders. The righteous people which guide the spiritual borders. You can have the righteous people, the Talmidei Chachamim, the sages of the generation. They're going to go from city to city, and what are they going to do? They're going to ask for charity. Unfortunately, that's what they have to do. We have a yeshiva, we want to give money for the poor people. There's orphans and they get married, and they go. But what is going to happen to them? No one's going to respect them. They're not going to find favor in their eyes. No one's going to respect them and say, okay, fine, here's $5 and go and leave me, stop calling me, stop bothering me. Instead of us running after the sages have to come to us, and we won't even respect them. That's unfortunate. This is what the Gemara goes on in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97a, says that honor would dwindle. The honor will go down. What does the Yad Ramah goes and explain? That those that need to be honored or should be honored, they're going to be abused instead. I don't even have to begin to explain this. This is very, very self-explanatory. That nowadays we see this. The people that really should be honored, instead of being honored, they're getting abused, they're getting ridiculed, they're getting put into the papers for whatever God-forsaken reason that there is, all for the negative, for the negative aspect of it. The Gemara in Ketubot, page 112b, goes and says there's going to be accusations against the Chachamim. This we see, there's a decree always against the sages. First of all, there's a decree against anybody who has a beard. I noticed that, right? It's very, very interesting. Right? Unfortunately fortunately, I don't know, for the Muslims as well. You got a beard, imam, whatever, who knows what it is. There's something against the beard. You have all of a sudden a guy, religious guy, has a kippah, goes and he gets arrested. What did the paper say? A rabbi gets arrested. The guy doesn't even put on tefillin, but he has a small kippah, but he has a beard, rabbi. Of course it's rabbis that go there. The second they're able to pinpoint, why do they do that? Maybe they want to attract more attention. They want to say, this is a rabbi who got it. Who knows is he a rabbi? Is he a real rabbi? What are you talking about that all of a sudden you're putting over there? Why? Because in the end of the day, there's going to be accusation against the Chachamim. Whether it's true, whether it's false, there's going to be accusations. But this leads us to one step closer to where the redemption is going to come. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 98, says that if you see a generation whose wisdom and Torah study is steadily diminishing, it's going down, then chakelo, then wait for the Mashiach to come. Wait for the Mashiach to come. It's coming right there. The Gemara also in Sotah says that the truth will vanish. This is so obvious. The truth. People are not interested in the truth now. People do not care about the truth. The Rabbi Dessler writes and says that we're going to be living in the end of days in a superficial generation. What is the generation called now? There's the millennials. What is it? Generation X? Millennials. Generation Z? We're in Generation Z now?
I'm a Generation Z. I don't know when it ended.
What if we're Z? Then what happens next? We have to start from A? Huh? Exclamation point. So the millennials are the older generations, but you have over here, if you want to say Generation Z, and no offense, well, offense, I couldn't care less, to the generation, like if you want to say something superficial, yeah, that is superficial. I could go on to go and explain this in such detail, but I am not because I don't have time, because we could go and delve a lot about this, about the superficiality of this current generation of where we are, but because of the vulgar profanity that will need to go to explain how we are so superficial in this generation, to the extent of what's going on in elementary schools. Let's start off with the public schools, elementary schools, and what really goes on, and how the children react, and what they watch when they go on their iPhones, and how they behave, and how they present their own bodies based on how they watch. There is a lot of superficiality that's going on over here that should be very, very obvious. In the generation of Mashiach comes, there's going to be a lot of superficiality. People are not going to be searching for the truth. No one cares about what's inside a person anymore. You go on a date with somebody, it's not about what's inside. If you are looking for what's inside, then chazak u'ba'uch, then it's amazing. And may you be blessed in finding the right one. Even if you don't, okay, you should be blessed in finding the right one. But nowadays, it's so much more of what's superficial is more important than what's actually important that's not important. You understand what I'm saying? So people go on a date, they'll go, okay, listen, am I number one? Let's say attraction, or how much money, which is very important depending on who you are. But they put that in more importance than what's inside that person. So that person could be the most disgusting mannered, character trait deficient person alive, but if they got the looks and the money, then all of a sudden, instead of being a negative 15 in the date scale, they're at 10. Be like, how did that happen? And it's because we're looking at the superficiality in our generation. That's what's going to happen. So let's try. What I just did right now is I just blurted out a bunch of different sources. We explained a little bit about it. Let's plug them all in together. Bear with me on this. So we start off with saying that in the days, in the ikvus of the Mashiach, those who fear sin will be disgusted. That will what? When someone fears sin, and that will be disgusted, we'll see how everything is interrelated, interconnected to everything else. Someone will start off with fear being someone who fears sin, that's disgusted. What's going to affect? That'll affect the Torah scholars. The Torah scholars will go, and they will base off their leadership based off on how people perceive them. If somebody perceives them as, oh, this is old-fashioned, so obviously the Erev level we're referring to over here, the not true Torah scholars, they're going to use it. They're going to use it in a deficient way. This is what the Gemara in Sotah says, that the Torah scholars, the wisdom of Torah scholars is going to decay. There's going to be something that doesn't smell right. First started off with what? First started off with the sin being discussed. That's going to lead to the Torah scholars going in a place that doesn't just smell right. Something is decaying over here. Something is wrong over here. Why? Because people are, let's say, going to be a generation where they can't hear a rebuke. So Torah scholars, or at least the people that are pretending to be those, are not going to rebuke them. They're not going to do what their job is, which is leading the generation. Instead, they're going to be what? Like the Gemara Sotah says, that pnei adok pnei akelev, the leaders of the generation is going to be like a dog. What does it say leaders like a generation can be like the dog? Rabbi Slanta goes and explains like this. Says sometimes you see a dog, someone walking with a leash with a dog, and the dog is in the front. So it looks like the dog is leading the owner. But really, what happens when the dog gets to the corner? It sits in the corner if it's not a wild dog, and waits for its master. Be like, hey, where are we going now? What are we doing? Right? Unless there's a hydrant, and then they're going to hang around the hydrant and do whatever they need to sniff. But they are going to go, and they're going to continue to wait for their leader and see what it is. He says that's how it's going to be in the generation of Mashiach. The leaders are going to be like a dog. What does that mean to be like a dog? It's going to look like they're leading. It's going to look at the modern synagogues. It looks like you have a rabbi, and the rabbi is leading. But what happened? The rabbi is going to lead. He's going to say something. Then he's going to look at the president, the vice president, and the secretary of treasury. Who knows? Well, they have a whole list of people that just run the place. I don't know why you even have a rabbi there. Right? They look at an entire board and be like, did I do well? I didn't do well? No Shabbos. No, no kosher. No. And they're going to look as if they're leading, but really, they're not leading it. The people that are holding the leash are leading it. The leader is going to be like the dog, because they're going to be appeared, but then when the second they make a ruling, they're going to look back and see if their congregation, if the board approves with what they said or disapproves with what they said. And that's how it's going to happen. So you're going to see over here, there's going to be something that's going to be decaying, something that's going to be smelling over here. So what's going to happen? First is going to be sin. The sin is going to be disgusted. That's going to be the leaders who choose obviously bad leaders, the fake leaders, and they're going to be the people are running is the people in the back of the shul. The board is going to be running it. That's going to lead to the decay of the Torah scholars, which would lead to the concept of there's going to be pnei keleb. The pnei adog is going to be pnei keleb. The generation is going to be like the face of a dog, which is going to lead to the disappearance of the real. What the Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97a, goes and says it's going to be the scholars are going to be decreased. Talmidei chachamim mismatim, they're going to be decreased. First is the decay, and then they're going to start decreasing. They're going to start disappearing. And unfortunately, once they start disappearing, the few that you have left are going to be going around collecting from city to city, but they're not going to have any honor. No one's going to honor them. Why? Because we know the Gemara on Sanhedrin, page 97a, says that the honor will decrease as well. Once you have the honor decrease, once you have the sages going, and no one's going to be around them, what are they going to do to the remainder of them? You think they would honor them? Absolutely not. There's going to be accusations against the Chachamim. There's going to be accusations against them. So how do we work on this? Instead of going and just going with the flow, you have to go and fight against it. You have to go and you have to follow the Torah. Not only you have to follow the Torah, you have to honor the sages. Not only you have to honor the sages, instead of waiting them to come to you, you come to them. Hey, can I give you something? I know you're working on building a yeshiva. I know you're working on filling the poor. I want to do that. Instead of, it should be going the other way, and this is what the way that we need to go through. What is the foundation of all? Because we're lacking truth. We have superficiality. When we get out of our superficiality, then we can reverse the entire system, and these are the things that we need to work on during the time of when Mashiach comes. So far, so good? That was part A. Let's go to part B. Yeah, was that clear? Just nod, because I'm not going to repeat it anyways. Did I drink it? I didn't. 30 minutes, and I didn't take a drink. I probably wouldn't have if I didn't even see it. You know how sometimes you see something, you're like, I'm thirsty. Yeah. Okay, but thank you whoever put it over here. Okay, so now, let's look at it. That what we just spoke about right now, it's a shame, because I really went through it fairly quickly. I could have gone through it a lot slower, but we spoke a lot about like the Torah scholars, the sages, what the concept in the relation to, let's say, the viewpoint of the sages, the Chachamim. Now I want to go through something called chutzpah. Chutzpah, I don't even think we have to translate anymore. I think it went into the Webster's Dictionary, right? Chutzpah is already in there, right? What does chutzpah mean then in Merriam-Webster's Dictionary? It's not Miriam, it's audacity. Yeah. Audacity, so they got it right. What? What's there?
Zealous, bold.
Zealous, I would think that. I don't know. So, there's what? There's a dictionary on everyone's phone also. We didn't need to look. So, let's go through some sources and let's branch us off the same thing. Audacity. Okay, that's a word. Audacity. So, shameless. Ooh, that's a good word. I like that word. We're going to use that. Okay. Shameless. Okay. I'm going to go through quickly 6 sources, and then we're going to break it up, explain it, and then combine it again. Now that you missed possibly, maybe, hopefully not, the first part, now that you know the method, now try to bear in mind in this. This is the reason why I specifically started with that, and we're going to go to this one as well. This one next. The Gemara in Sotah says that in the time that precedes the ikvus of the Mashiach, the first time, there is going to be chutzpah yasgeh. There's going to be the insolence, the chutzpah, the shamelessness, the audacity is going to be increased. The Gemara in Sotah also says that the youth will embarrass the elders, and the elders will stand before the youth. The Gemara in Sotah, source number 3, the Gemara in Sotah also says that haben eno mitbayesh me'aviv, the son is not going to be embarrassed by his father. Source number 4, the Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97, it says that Dor sheben David ba, the generation, right? We're going a step closer. Ha'azut tarber, the audacity. Here it's different. It's the arrogance, the boldness is different than chutzpah. The arrogance, the boldness will increase. The source number 5, the Sanhedrin, page 97a, is also like we used before. Honor will go down. And then we say source number 6, ein ben David ba'at until the people that are arrogant will be destroyed, will cease to exist. There's a lot going on of what I just said. So let's try to break this down and stick with me. Let's start off with the Gemara in Sotah. The Gemara in Sotah says in 49b that chutzpah will increase. And then the Gemara says that not chutzpah, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, so first, there's going to be an increase in chutzpah. Then, really closer to the generation, Dor sheben David ba says that arrogance, boldness, insolence will increase. What's the difference between these two things? So let's first start with chutzpah. Chutzpah, shamelessness, is you have, let's say, somebody in politics. So the way that works in politics is that, and let's not be broad, let's not generalize, so let's just use this as an example. if you're a good liar, the better liar you are, the better politician that you are. Again, just an example, nothing against politicians. How do politicians, some politicians, maybe one politician, I don't know, whatever, okay, go, the more that they will go, they're always excited. The more that, like we know that they'll go, right? So, the elections are coming up soon, right? So you're going to have a bunch of presidential, candidates that are going to go up there and be like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Just look at history, right? It's not going to happen. They're just saying things. I mean, maybe they'll try. Maybe it's out of their control. I'm not saying it's their fault. But they'll say things. That and some things is a complete lie. Because what? They'll say one thing to one crowd and a slightly different thing to another crowd. It'll depend. I love the Jews. I love the Christians. I love the Muslims. The Muslims are the greatest. What? Did Israel? Israel is great. Israel is terrible. What's Israel? It's Palestine. So it's like all depends on who you're talking to. You have over there the chutzpah. The more audacity that you have, the greater that you are. The greater that you are, chutzpah yasgeh, the arrogance is the audacity, the chutzpah is going to go up because the more that you are chutzpahdik, the more that you are audaciousness. Is that a right word? The more that you are shameless. I don't know. The audacious, something-ish, audacious, boldness. Any other chutzpahdik is the more chutzpahdik that you are. There we go. The more chutzpahdik that you are, the more. It's a higher level. Look at this. Even you look in the previous presidential election, the more that you were able to bash the other person and be like, he got you. Yeah, he got you. How low does somebody have to be? This is not a yo mama joke, type of thing. But that's what it looked like. It looked like, oh yeah, well I'm going to put you in prison. Oh yeah, well all you are is you wear whatever it is. It doesn't, people are going back and forth, but this is what politicians represent, because the greater that you are is the more chutzpah that you have. And businesses as well. You have a business person, a salesperson, somebody walks into a clothing store. How do they try to sell you nowadays? Oh my God, you need a new wardrobe. You look homeless. And if they get somebody, they make you feel like 2 cents. And then they'll go and they'll be like, okay, now you need to buy something. And you made the sale. Chazak lo, Baruch Hashem, I made the sale. That's, the more chutzpahdik that you are, the more chutzpahdik that you are, I'll not use any because I can't, the greater that you are. Chutzpah yasgeh, the greater that you are is the more chutzpahdik that you have. What is the relation? Now we said chutzpah is going to be in the beginning, but then when you get closer, it's going to be a little bit more. It's going to be arrogance. What's the relation? Chutzpah to arrogance. So we know that somebody who is bold, someone who is chutzpahdik, this is somebody who there's a lot of self-centeredness that is related, on this. And in fact, they're really very closely related, because the reason why you could be chutzpahdik is because you're very self-centered. The reason why you're self-centered is because you're very arrogant. But let's see what the difference is. So let's say Mr. A goes over to Mr. B, and he goes and he just says something very chutzpahdik to him. He says, what are you really worth? You're a piece of garbage. Basically just bashing the other person. The chutzpah that this guy has. How dare you go and bash somebody else? That's very different. But let's change it up a little bit and let's switch it to arrogance. What's the difference with arrogance? So A, instead of A telling B, what are you worth? A tells B, you know what I am worth? You know who I am? You're messing with me? Oh, that's a big difference. The chutzpah now is not only projecting, it's also now about me. It's all about my arrogance in it. It's taking it one step further, saying beforehand there's some people that are chutzpahdik, but they don't say how great they are because they know they're really not that great. So they'll say, you're so bad. But really when you have the higher level, closer to Mashiach, I'll be like, you're so bad. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I do? So what we see over here is the chutzpah is not only going to increase in the quantity, but it's also going to increase in the quality. And by increase, I mean decrease. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be worse, not better, in it. Now, let's call them the liberals. Yeah. A Democratic Party, is that? Yeah, let's use that. So they fight for everybody's rights. They're like, the right of this, the right of that. Like what? Demanding rights. When somebody goes and demands rights, it tells something about them. Your life could either be a focus of demanding rights is self-centered. It's, this is my right. Oh, you're fighting for somebody else? Yeah. But deep down, there's a reason why that's connected somehow to you. Because when you're demanding rights, is very different, or when you're worrying about your obligations. There are two very, very different aspects. We spoke about this concept before. Very, very important aspect, especially when you deal with relationships. When you deal with a relationship, there's rights and there's obligation. So a husband will have, let's say, the obligation to treat his wife respectfully, and the wife will have the obligation to treat her husband respectfully. But if the husband says, my right is that you should treat me respectfully, and she goes and says, it's my right that you treat me respectfully, it's a very different relationship than when you're focusing on what you need to do for me versus what I need to do for you. So when the generation is only focused on rights, then they're not focused on obligations. Well, my right, your right. You do what you need to do. Worry about the other person? Never. Let them worry about themselves. Let them do what they need to do. So when we're looking at it, when we're looking at only focusing on our rights, that's self-centered. First of all, that's a terrible quality to have in a relationship. That's something that's going to crash and burn. But when you understand that, and by the way, this is something very interesting, the Torah only focuses on obligations. Torah doesn't focus on the rights. Torah focuses on what you need to do. Stop worrying about somebody else. Oh, you infringed on somebody else? Okay, now it's your obligation to go and make amends for that. You have to go and ask Mechila for that. Not the other person has to come to you and say, hey, I forgive you. You have to go and, the Torah is very, very much focused on your obligations, not on your rights. If everybody does their obligations, everybody gets their rights as well. So when people, whatever party you want to call them, go and they focus only on the rights and the rights and the rights, but like, wait a second on the rights. Are you going and are you doing your obligations? That's what you need to do. Because if you're not, then all you are is a self-centered. It's just a different form of arrogance. Now, what is the greatest arrogance that you can have? The greatest chutzpah. The highest level of chutzpah is denying God. Atheist. Highest level of audacity, shamelessness, boldness, audaciousness, everythingness, just the worst of everythingness. Is what? Is somebody that could go and say that there's no such thing as a God. Why? And I say this again and again, people, like, it's so simple, and it's so obvious, at least to me. If you're denying something, that means you know everything. Because if you say that this doesn't exist, there's no such thing as a pink flying cat. I don't know why I was using this example, I like it. Just go with it. There's a pink flying cat, and I tell you, I went to Zimbabwe, I didn't, but imagine I did. I went to Zimbabwe, and I saw a pink flying cat, and you say, impossible, the thing doesn't exist. I'm like, do you know all the species of cats? How do you know that it doesn't exist? Are you a catologist? I don't know, a zoologist? Whatever. Are you a specialist in cats? How do you know? If you were to say that this doesn't exist, that means you know all the species of cats and birds and the combinations of them in between, what exists and what doesn't. Oh, once you know everything that exists on planet Earth, then fine, then you could say, yeah, it doesn't exist. But if you don't know that it doesn't exist, then maybe there is a pink flying cat. Maybe there is. How do you know? So if you want to say that God doesn't exist, that means that you know everything that exists. Because in order to say that something doesn't exist, you have to know everything that does exist. So if you're an atheist, that means you know everything. If you don't think you know everything, then you're arrogant. If you're arrogant, that's a level of chutzpah that goes above and beyond generation. Dol sheben David ba. This is not only chutzpah, this is talking about an arrogant level that we have, that is unprecedented. How dare you say, you want to be agnostic? Fine. What is agnostic? You're not sure. There might be a God, there might not be a God. You want to be an atheist? Audacity, shamelessness, chutzpah that you have, the arrogance that you have to say that this doesn't exist. How do you know? It's easy to say, yeah, it does exist. Maybe. I don't know. To say that it doesn't exist, I've had debates with people where, when people sometimes come to me and they have, they're prepared to all their questions, they usually do their homework. So they listen to a few of my classes. And that's how they do homework on me. And they go, and I've had this happen again and again, where they'll say, like, listen, I'm not an atheist, I'm an agnostic. So this is why I listened to your classes, you had a good point. I'm like, oh, Baruch Hashem, so we get somewhere over here. At least we got you from an atheist to agnostic. But the second that they leave the conversation with me, they're going to talk to their friends, all of a sudden they're back to an atheist over here. Where's the truth? The truth will be decreased. The truth will go there. And even them, they're just telling you because they know they can't argue with you. When they know they don't have a good argument, so then they say, okay, fine, I agree with you. But the second that they go somewhere else, they go back to their false argument. But you know it's false. You know that you don't believe in that. And I've seen this with my own eyes, and I've heard it with my own ears, that the same person that told me that he's not an atheist goes and tells somebody else that he is an atheist. I'm like, what are you changing? Where is the truth? Where is the truth? There's a generation where it's all superficiality. It's all about what, I don't even know what, it's impressing somebody. Nobody's impressed when you say you're an atheist. At least, from my understanding, someone says an atheist, I think, okay, ignorance, mental disability, what can we do? We should pray for you, for the nefesh, for the guf, for everything. Unfortunately, your mental capacity cannot understand some basic concepts on things. Because if you think about it, it's a very simple calculation. In order to say something doesn't exist, you have to know everything that does exist. You know that everything exists? No, it's impossible. So then how can you say that God doesn't exist?
a logical view, but like more from like
Emotion? Of course it's emotional.
Because like if you say there is like a God, you have to like
Of course.
do, like
I've yet to
inner work and then like be good, like and not sin and not be like
I've yet to meet an atheist that wasn't emotional. And they all say, oh, let's go for logic. We're just trying to prove logic to everybody. Be like, you're not logical. Like, why are you saying things that you're not about yourself? Like, yeah, I'm like, please, we'll hold hands and we'll do logical stuff. Let's start with understanding that you cannot say something doesn't exist if you don't know everything that does exist. Like, that's logical. Where do you come from? Where do you go? There's nowhere. It makes no sense. It literally makes no sense. I don't for the life of me, I can't understand it. You have sophisticated college professors standing over there and I'm an atheist. And be like, how? Please explain to me how. It's an emotional. You're an emotional atheist. You're not an intellectual atheist. You're not a logical atheist. And when I was speaking to one particular atheistic Jew, call him a make-believe fictional character of atheist, because I don't believe that terminology is correct. But and I asked this question, and I said to him, I said, your parents are religious? Like, yeah. Your grandparents are religious? Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Do you think you know more Torah than your grandfather, or who do you think knows more Torah? And he says, for sure, my grandfather. Like, what about your father? Who knows more Torah? You or your father? So it's not my father. Your great-grandfather, who knows more Torah? You or your father? Like, my great-great-grandfather. Yeah, they would know more than me. So I'm like, let me get this straight. So you have your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, and we could go on for generations, till Moshe Rabbeinu, until Adam HaRishon. All know more Torah than you. You agree with that, right? Be like, yeah, most likely. But yet, somehow you know more than them because you say that the Torah is not real, that there's no such thing as a God. So explain to me that logic. How is the logic that you know less than them, but yet you claim something that they know more of, and you're saying that that's wrong? Does that make sense to you? Does that make any sense at all? It's like going to a gastroenterologist, someone who specializes in the stomach. And the gastroenterologist goes and says, this person has a diagnosis of X, Y, and Z. And you go and you say, nah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. You just ate something bad and don't worry about it. Be like, wait a minute, did you spend 10 years learning about the stomach? Like, what do you know about it? Be like, well, I checked WebMD and told me, yeah, it's just a stomach virus. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'm like, you're insane. You have a physical, mental deficit going on in you. Like, you're going and you're arguing with a specialist in the field based on something you read off while you were on the toilet? That's what you're basing your knowledge from? And that's really what we're dealing with atheists. You have the greatest rabbis who spent their entire life learning Torah, and they say this is real. And then you maybe opened up a book once. And I guarantee you, these people, the atheists, did not open up books. I had an argument. I tend to speak to a lot of atheists, unfortunately. They say, I went to yeshiva. I said, that doesn't mean anything. I know many people that you physically went to yeshiva, not mentally. You were in the never land. You're like, what do you mean you went to yeshiva? I'm like, and I told this guy, he says, I know you. We talked about it. It says all your information on Judaism doesn't come from Torah sources. It comes from Christian sources. I'm like, I know it because I research it because I gave classes about it. I don't know where your question. It's something very interesting. Well, you have all these atheists. They come to you with these questions. I'm like, these are not original questions. You got it from this website. This you got from that website. This you took from this atheist, and this you took from this speaker over that's an atheist. You didn't do any original thought yourself. You listened to some guy on YouTube or some TED speech or whatever it is that you wasted your time with, and you heard some guy walking around and saying, hey, God doesn't exist because of X, Y, and Z. Noah's flood. How could it be the ark? Be like, aha, perfect thing. You'll come and be like, aha, how can you prove this? And be like, am I answering you or am I answering the other guy who really originated this question? Which really comes from a Christian source, because that's how they're understanding. Most of these people that are atheists in the non-Jewish world, not most, I'm talking about 99% of them, are basing off their atheism based off of Christians' ideology of what the Old Testament is, what the New Testament is. So it's even a full pretense even to begin to discuss that. But you have that, and your understanding of the Torah is faulty. So not only that, I told this guy, it's the same person, so not only do you not understand the Torah, not only do you have a faulty understanding of the Torah, and not only do you have less of understanding than your fathers and your grandfathers and your great-grandfathers, and yet you think that you know better than all of them? there's somebody I would like you to meet. He has a white lab coat, a little name tag. Very nice people, you know. They'll just run some tests. You know, I would think it'll be beneficial for you. Does it make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? These are things that are obvious. I'm not speaking something, I'm not proving something out of the blue. I'm talking straight up logic. So I'm talking, you want to argue with me? Go ahead. You know, let's duel. I'll take you on. Well, like, I'll do it. You know, like, there's no logic behind it. Yet you still have it. This is where Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chava goes and says the greatest cause for heresy in the so-called modern revelations is the natural sciences. We think we know. Science tells us. Look what science tells us. Even though something is very interesting. Every time science tells you something, it's very likely that science will slowly and soon change about it. Cell phones, good for you or bad for you? Bad for you. We'll see what happens, you know, in a short while. Cigarettes, good or bad for you? Bad for you. What about when it first came out? Very good. Lose weight. Metabolism increases. But science told us. We know, historically speaking, you look at science, flip-flop, bipolar. First this and first no, first yes, and then be like, forget about it. I don't want to listen to you anymore. Make up your mind. No, well, we believe it. Why do we believe it? Arrogance. Be like, no, we decide what we want to believe in. We have the arrogance. The level of chutzpah is a different level of where it originally started off. First we say level of chutzpah, then we say talking about, no. This is a level of arrogance. When you're dealing with atheists, that's arrogance. It's pure up arrogance. We know that the three signs that you can tell someone comes from the Jewish nation, the Gemara in Yevamot, page 79a, that says that what is a Jew? Rachmanim, Baishanim, Ugmolei Chasadim. Somebody who Rachmanim is somebody who is merciful. Baishanim, someone who is bashful. And Gmolei Chasadim, somebody that goes and does kindness. Arrogance knocks all those out. All those go out. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97a, says that the honor will dwindle, will go down when the time of Mashiach comes. Children, you know, when people go and respect people that shouldn't be respected and disrespect people that should be respected, the children see this. When the children see this and be like, you're respecting them, so why should I respect you? Now, this is all subconsciously. You don't have a little child pulling grabs on, be like, well, if you're respecting this. But like, the things that the children pick up. And what does this lead to? This leads to the Gemara in Sotab, which page 49b says that in Ikvas at the Mashiach, in the time before Mashiach comes, the youth will embarrass the elders. And not only they will embarrass the elders will stand up before the youth. You imagine the chutzpah is the little kid will go and embarrass the older people, and the older people will stand up in front of the younger people. The one explanation that I was thinking about this is that you have, let's say, a lot of companies nowadays, especially in the tech industry, the high-tech industry, the tech startups, are young kids, right? You have young kids, they're listening to the music, they're drinking champagne, and they're, you know, 74 hours a day, you know, on their thing. And then they build businesses, and sometimes they're very successful. So they hire the older generation to go. People will have, you know, marketing experience. People that have business administration experience. They hire and who are they? They could be their grandparents or their parents. But yet you have a little kid, right? 21, 22 years old, hiring now a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old. Just because he works for you doesn't mean that you don't have to treat him with respect or her with respect. That's chutzpah. What do you mean? Who do you? Be like, no, he works for me. They're like, hey, buddy, do this and do this. Speak. You could do it. Obviously, you're paying them. They have to do their work, but you have to speak respectfully. Where is the respect? There's no respect nowadays. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky one time was on a plane, and he was sitting next to one of the original Zionistic Jews who built, Israel in a very type of he wasn't flying with Herzl, but I'm saying he was building with that type of mentality. And the Zionists saw how the rabbi's son was like. They were flying, and the rabbi's son kept on coming, be like, Father, can I do anything for you? Do you need this? Do you need that? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? This, no, okay, fine. A half hour later, Father, can I do anything for you? Da, 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 da. So the Zionist was like, unbelievable. He says, that is, I'm really, no words. So amazing how your son is so respectful to you. He says, when we started, the Israel, and we went, the Zionistic concept of Israel, we were Baruch Hashem, we were successful in establishing a state. But one thing we were not, successful in establishing respect for the elders. Now, the generation does not respect the elders. And by the way, this is not just this generation. We're talking about a previous or two generations ago. And he says, I see your son. Look how respectful he is to you. It mind boggles me. So you know what Rabbi Kamenetsky told him? Rabbi Kamenetsky told him, it's very simple. He says, because we teach our children that we come from Adam HaRishon, and God created Adam HaRishon. And the older the person is that the closer that person is to the first human being. and that's more respectful. They have to do that. So the older generation is respected more than the younger generation because they're closer to the, to the original. But you're teaching the other way. You're teaching that we came from apes and monkeys and donkeys and who knows what. And you're coming and you're saying that every generation afterwards is more advanced. It says, why should they respect you? You're telling them not to respect you. You're one step closer to a monkey. They're one step further from a monkey. It says, of course they're gonna disrespect you. So when we're looking at it, we see the disrespect that happens nowadays. I don't even have to, begin of it. The Gemara Sotah says that the son is not going to be embarrassed by his father. Children now, it used to be that fathers or mothers will go and they will discipline the children. They will go and they will threaten the children. I will take away your toy. Now the children threaten the parents. I will call Child Protective Services. I have my number on speed dial, my new cell phone that you gave me let's call it Xmas, right? Because not Jews, obviously. Because Jews obviously treat you with respect. That's when you're gonna throw my toy away? I'm gonna go and hit myself and tell them that you hit me. He's like, oh, you think this doesn't happen? This happens. So when the children, instead of the parents disciplining the children discipline the parents. Instead of the children standing up for when the parent comes in, then now the parent has to stand up and be like, is it okay? Where did you get that bruise from? It wasn't me. I didn't touch you. I didn't do this. Instead, the parents have to jump around the children, and the children now have to go and they're getting the respect they have. It's a backwards world that we're going on. This is exactly what the Gemara is telling us. Exactly what the sages are telling us. Now, when you have no honor, when you have an increase in chutzpah, when you have this level, then what do you think there's going to be any rebuke? Of course there's not going to be a rebuke. Who's going to rebuke? The Gemara Sotah, page 49b, says that during the time of the ikvus of the Mashiach, there's not going to be any rebuke. Who are you to rebuke me? Who do you think you are? Really? You did this wrong and you did that wrong? How could it be? If somebody's now going and not looking for the truth, they're not interested in telling them to say, hey, no, don't do this. I've had conversations with people where, even in the dating world, that sometimes I tell, I get two different responses. Somebody comes over to me with, let's say, a certain dating issue, or whatever, any issue. And if I see there's a problem with them, I tell them, you're the problem, go seek help. It's not the other person, it's you who's the problem. So I see very, very conflicting results. Sometimes it'd be like, okay, thank you, and I'll go for that. And some people never contact me again. Both I'm grateful for. Because the people that contact me again, obviously they're interested in growing. The people that are not, okay, fine, you want to do it. They're not seeking truth. There's sometimes people call and ask advice. They're seeking validation. Not direction, not what I should do, but validate me. I'm like, listen, this is not instant validation. You can't put a quarter and I'll validate you. You want my advice? I'll be very brutally honest. And I am, as people know me. People here that talk to me know that I am brutally honest. And if there's an issue, I will say it. And if there's not an issue, then fine. There's nothing to do, to speak about it. But who can accept that? Somebody who's looking for the truth. Somebody who's not looking for the truth has no interest in it. They're not going to hear rebuke. They're going to be disrespectful. They're going to be chutzpah. They're going to go and they're not going to honor the sages. Everything is going to go based on it. So again, this is also another fundamental aspect. You have to be looking for the truth. You have to be searching in the truth. Let's go and let's close this loop of what we just said in the chutzpah part. So we started off saying like this. We started off that the Gemara Sotah says that the chutzpah is going to increase. What does that mean it's going to increase? The Gemara Sotah, what we just said, the youth is going to embarrass the elders. And not only that, the youth, also the Gemara Sotah says, that are going to go and that even the sons are not going to be embarrassed by the fathers. It can be such a level of arrogance, but it's going to go even further. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97, says, in Dor Sheben Mashiach, but Dor that Mashiach is coming, Dor Sheben David Ba, the arrogance is going to increase. Not chutzpah, arrogance it's going to go. You're talking about the arrogance is going to increase. When you have arrogance, it's going to increase. Like, of course, the Gemara Sotah says there's not going to be a rebuke in the time when Mashiach comes. Who's going to rebuke? What's going to happen if you have an increase of arrogance, increase of chutzpah? There's not going to be any rebuke. So there's no rebuke, there's no hope. What's going to happen if there's no hope? Game over. That's what the final, the Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 98 say. It says, Ein ben David ba. This is a different terminology. We said Dor Sheben. This is Ein ben the Mashiach is not coming until the arrogant will cease to exist. That's what's going to happen. It's going to cease to exist. So the question is, how do you want to fall into that equation? There's two ways to cease to exist the arrogance. One is you cease to exist if you're arrogant, or the arrogance will cease to exist. But one thing is sure going to happen before Mashiach comes is that arrogance is going to cease to exist. So you could decide how you want to fall into which part of that equation. You want to fall into the equation where you and the arrogance will cease to exist very deep down, or the arrogance will just go deep down and you will continue to exist. That's what the sages are telling us. The sages are telling us there's something very, very important up here. And when we're looking at these concepts, when we're looking at these ideas, when you're seeing what the Chachamim are telling us, there's something very interesting, and whoever wants to could go and look inside the, what the Gemara says in the Gemara Sotah, the Gemara Sanhedrin. Very, very interesting. It starts off on a more of a lighter chutzpah, maybe like a little bit of a disgust towards Talmidei Chachamim or the Torah scholars or the Torah wisdom, but then it goes a lot worse. It goes from disgust to craziness. This is unbelievable. I can't understand it. It goes from from a low level to a high level. The closer that we are to Mashiach, the more obvious that we see things. Now, instead of thinking of chutzpah, we see all of a sudden arrogance. Now, what is the whole purpose of me going through all this entire spiel, even though we spoke about many things, is that we get to see, are we in the heels of Mashiach? Are we in the generation of Mashiach? Are we in the heels of the Mashiach, or are we in the generation of Mashiach? Generation of Mashiach means that it's happening in our lifetime. Heels of Mashiach means it's coming close to it. The things that we have been saying, the things that we have been discussing, is no longer heels. That's generation. These are things, and it's very obvious. We went on and on about the atheists and the arrogance. This is not a chutzpah on a regular level. It's on a higher level. So when we're discussing the prophecies of what the sages told us is going to happen, we have to figure out where do we put ourselves in which category. Are we on the heels or are we on the generation? If we're in the generation, then we better shape up. What's the word? If you're not shaping up, you're shaping out. You better figure it out, because that's what's happening in our generation. It's so obvious. People ask me, when's Mashiach coming? What do I answer? Soon. But when? Like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I've had this question asked me quite a few times.
Are you investing?
I'd be like,
retirement.
That's what I tell people who think they're Mashiach. I tell them, you do tshuva. But and now that we started speaking about this,
embracing the bad things that are going on, if that means that
we
it's just coming closer.
We should realize the stage of we're in. We should not embrace it and be like, chutzpah, bring it on. We should go and fight against the chutzpah, meaning that
if we're fighting against it, then it's going to be, isn't it?
No. So when we're fighting against it, it doesn't mean that every single person over here is going to be an atheist, going to be a chutzpah. It means that these are the things that why did the sages tell us this? Not only because, number one, we realize when it's the end of days, but more importantly is we realize what we need to work on in the end of days. So the chutzpah, you can work on for your positive. What's a positive way of working on the chutzpah? Back then, we used to be, unfortunately, embarrassed to be a Jew. Now we can be proud to be a Jew. You're walking, you walk with a kippah, you walk modestly. You're going and you're praying, you stand up and you pray. You go and you have to go and put on tefillin publicly, you put on tefillin. This is what you need to do. Stop worrying about what other people are going to think.
Pray,
exactly. They take out their magic carpet and they do whatever they need to do with it. You take out your magic straps and you do whatever you need to do with it. So the concept here is, I know we went a little bit of a journey and a little bit difficult, and I know some people may have to listen to this again, may have to review this, but it's something very, very important that you do need to consider this, that when you're learning, and I was going back and forth between the two Gemara, back and forth, again and again. I'm like, there's got to be something over here. The Gemara doesn't just repeat itself for fun. There's something that's going on over here. And the more that I delved into it, the more obvious that this appeared to me. Right? According to my own humble opinion, this is the way that I see it. You have it over here first. The Gemara Sotah speaks about something in a very, very, starter type of way. But the Gemara Sanhedrin, that's a generation of Mashiach is coming. That is coming close. And when we look at it, we see where we're standing. We are standing. I'll tell you from my own personal, learning and research and studying this, we're in the generation. We're no longer in the heels. This is it. This is the end of days. When is it going to happen? Only God knows.
Tonight.
Tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem. We hope that it comes very soon, right? We'll speak about when it could come, when it come, right? But B'ezrat Hashem, maybe we utilize this to understanding the true words of the sages and fixing ourselves what we do need to fix on. And that we are able to come to the time when we greet Mashiach. B'mehera b'yameinu. Amen. Question. We had a few questions. We'll go this way. You had a question?
You said that how before that we're not going to have them. So how are we supposed to get through this period without Talmidei Chachamim?
The Talmidei Chachamim are going to be decreased.
Who's
So,
supposed to guide us through it?
So you'll always have leaders, and you'll always have, for example, even Mashiach. You'll always have Mashiach. But there's going to be the level, either we want to call it a quantity or quality, are going to be decreased. We see, unfortunately, both nowadays. We have great, great Torah sages. But as we know, every generation that goes away from Mahal Sinai, from Moshe Rabbeinu, is decreasing and decreasing. But we'll always have leaders, and we'll always have that. You have to make sure that you're following the correct leader. You're following the Gedolei Adol, you're following Rav Chaim Kanievsky, you have nothing to worry about. But there's some people that tend to follow people that maybe don't subscribe to that type of Torah, and that's where it's a problem. Again, it's a lot of liberal, open orthodoxy, conservative, reform, reconstructionist. We could go through a lot of other nouns and verbs and whatnot. But you have to really know who you're following, and you're following the true Torah, and not just some Erev Rav version of it. Now, again, I want to be very careful. Don't start assuming this rabbi is Erev Rav, this rabbi. We don't know. And stop pointing and saying things. Unfortunately, people do that. This is Erev Rav. Stop it. We don't know who's Erev Rav. We don't know who's Amalek. What we have to do is follow the true Torah sages, and that we have to stick to that. That's what we have to stick to. Yeah.
You said that you already gave a whole speech about who the Erev Rav is, but could you just, in short, summarize,
what the Erev Rav says? I think it's Mashiach part 6, if I'm not mistaken, that I gave it. The Erev Rav is... there are going to be different reincarnations from previous, like from the time of Egypt, and from the time of, let's say, the Erev Rav, which were originally the Erev Rav, which were the Egyptians who converted into Judaism, but in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, but they made the Egel. They had a very, very deficient concept of what is the correct Judaism, and they're only interested in the materialistic things, and they abuse their power and their source for it. So those are the people that we see over there, and I gave different categories of what different categories of the Erev Rav are. Of depending, some of them are only interested in honor and power. Some are interested in focus on money. Some a combination. There's different,
People with the wrong concept.
To be fair, though, there are some, most likely some rabbis like that in these so-called from world too. I'm just saying it's not.
Depends. I don't know everybody.
It's not just open Orthodox.
We don't call out any rabbis. We don't go right. At least I don't. Right. So, but yes, it is possible. I don't know everybody, and I purposely stay away from politics in this area because people ask me, "What do you think about this?" And sometimes I say, "Righteous, righteous, righteous," and sometimes I say, "I don't know." And that's not a hint. I'd be like, okay, don't stay away. No, sometimes I stay away. There's some things that you stay away from because what's the point? There's nothing that you gain from these. What do you have to worry about? You have to worry about you're following the leaders of the generation. So if you're Brooklyn, you're following the Brooklyn head of the rabbis. You're following brothers, for example, Rabbi Brudny, right? One of the leaders of the generation. Rabbi Reisman. You follow the leaders of the community, and then you go. Let's say you go. Then you go the Gedolei of the Gedolei, which is the highest. You're talking about Chaim Kanievsky. So there's levels of rabbis of where you go and where you lead to. And then there are some people that tend to stem to this person has a beard, so let me just listen to whatever he says. And he says, here's some marijuana and the price is this. Did I say rabbi? I meant dealer. What did I say? No, I meant, or both, whatever it is. So you have different things, like where people go and they tend to blur the line of depending of where, they call them shopping around for psaks and shopping around for what they want to hear and what they want to say. So again, there's a lot to speak about it, but...
in two different places, one an online Torah thing and one in a Jewish college, I heard speakers and they started saying the beauty of Christianity and things. I was able to get out of the class. Yeah, no, they were everybody was just listening, and this teacher was going on and on about how it's so beautiful. So I had to switch classes. But Erev Rav could be you would think it's a Torah website, everything's kosher on there. But
you have to be very careful. Yeah, I'm not saying
sounds wrong.
Right. It doesn't necessarily mean just let's say somebody says something wrong. Doesn't mean that they're Erev Rav. They might just be wrong.
No, but it was very strange concepts they were saying, and nobody else realized because it was a Jewish environment. Right.
Right, it is. But you should also realize that there are some poskim of the older generation that say that the purpose of Christianity was to open the door for Mashiach. Because then when Mashiach comes, so not that Christianity is a beautiful thing, it's wrong, it's a avodah zarah according to the majority of the poskim. But if you want to say where the benefit comes in, and again, there's always good in everything, that even Islam, they're serving one God, but they murder people. Again, it's a small percentage, but whatever, they do pray, whatever it is. But I'm saying there is a lot. So what happens is that a lot of times we tend to judge based on the knowledge that we have. And there's a lot to go into different things. So if you had an issue, Specifically, I would say to go and ask somebody about that issue, what the person says. Now again, that sounds very off as well.
Acceptable to having a teacher, and I know that.
Right, so then run away very fast. Yeah, but put it this way.
She was like a dramatic history teacher, and then I switched because of the I said it's because of the timing. I couldn't say it was because of her.
Right.
And then I got the most boring history teacher, but she was like from and everything. So.
If you're going and somebody's telling you that, let's say, Christianity is beautiful, it's amazing, and blah, 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 you should stay away. If someone's telling you that homosexuality is amazing and beautiful and blah, 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 stay away. There are certain things that you stay away from because the Torah says to stay away from it. But let's leave it at that. How to judge them is also, you have to be very careful on how to judge people. Any other questions? No? Okay. Understood? Was this clear? The class? Yeah? See how to read people. Yeah, I was actually pretty impressed. I'm actually surprised that people understood it. Baruch Hashem. It's a little bit on the heavy side, but I think that's very, very important. B'ezrat Hashem, next week I want to go on a similar thing, but we're going to go branch on to different ideas, also to show how really close we are to when Mashiach comes. Okay, Chazak u'Baruch.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.